Welcome back, Chappelle. All right, good to see you. Haven't had a flip in a couple days. All right, so let's get after it, shall we? Now, anyway, so we started talking about the Romans, right? We finished up in class talking about like the founding of Rome, the mythical founding of Rome, anyway. The one that's like probably definitely didn't happen, that involves like two siblings that were ridiculously mad at each other about naming something. Why am I touching my hair so much? It's bothering 11 daylights out of me. Oh, it's because I can do this. You do this. All right, so anyway, now, so the big thing is the mythical founding of Rome we talked about in class. Romulus, Remus, right? And then we talked about the actual founding of Rome, right? The actual founding being the Latins, right? The small group of nomadic people, and then breaking away, right? Breaking off a little new smaller group, right? So big Latins, and then a little group of them go, and then they actually found their own city known as Rome, right? So now the Latins would continue to grow, and they would do their own thing, and they would eventually be taken over also by these people, which is very, very important. The Etruscans, right? So the Etruscans are phenomenally important because the Etruscans are the reason why the Romans act the way that they do, all right? So the Etruscans, it's hard to explain, but you got to understand. The Etruscans were a group of people that were not Roman, that were directly growing alongside of them, right? But the Etruscans had created a few city-states in the northern area of Rome, right? So, or like, not the northern area of Rome, but to the north of Rome, right? Because remember, Italy is a hot-ticket place to start a new civilization. It's got military protection along the coastline because of all the cliffs and stuff like that. It's got silt. It's got volcanic ash in the dirt. It's got great farmland. It is very much less rugged. It's easy to trade on land. There is a mountain range that protects you to the north and one to the east, right? The Apennines and the Alps. It's also got a civilization of people, the Greeks, right, who had colonized Sicily, bringing new items and luxury goods to you, right? So Italy's a good place to be. Well, they weren't the only Rome. Also, the Etruscans, who some of their earliest artworks look like so, look dangerously Greek, do they not? They've got similar Greek musical instruments. They obviously have olive trees right here in the back in their paintings. They've got laurel wreaths on their heads. They've got togas. What the heck is going on here? Well, they had traded with the Greeks, right? And what happens when you trade with other people? Say it. Go ahead, say it. Say it. I'm waiting. That's right, cultural diffusion. I heard all y'all over there, right? Good job, Shaq Snyder. All right, so now, anyway, so you have to understand, trade with the Greeks is massively important because it brought all the Etruscans the Greek alphabet. It brought the Etruscans Greek music. It brought them Greek mythology, right? It brought them a religious structure. It brought them all of these things that eventually would bleed into the Romans, right? So while the Romans were under Etruscan rule for 250 years, mind you, which is a very long time, they built walls around Rome, right? They protected Rome. They used them and sort of abused them as well. They treated them as second-class citizens, right? So there's a whole story that goes on that I don't really want to talk about because it's really messed up, but it's like, all right, so, but the Romans are eventually going to expel the Etruscans, right? They're going to expel them. So, like, they're going to push them out, create their own city-state that they think they got this big bad army now, but it's not that big nor bad. Now, the Etruscans, though, become their own state. So they push the Etruscans out, and they never see the Etruscans ever again, right? So even though most things they did were extremely Etruscan, right? Really, really quickly, over to the side of your notes, you need to jot this down. So technically, Roman culture is actually is nothing of its own. It's a combination of three other peoples, right? So it's a combination of Latin, Etruscan, and Greek, right? Legs, all right? That's genius. Roman culture stands on the legs of the people that came before them, right? Yeah, Roman culture's got legs. Latins, Etruscans, Greeks. What was I thinking? Any Camden Catholic kid that's watching this right now, why didn't we think of this, all right? So even though most things they did were Etruscan, right, they still were a combination of Latin with their language, right, their farming techniques, Etruscan with their cultural things, and the Greeks who originally gave those things to the Etruscans later on, right? So, because, for example, they used the Etruscan alphabet, right, that is going to become their base alphabet, that includes new letters like X and Z, and as well as several other ones, right? So they're going to then also adopt Etruscan clothing right there. The toga was an originally Etruscan thing, right? So whereas Greeks usually wore tunics, Etruscans adopted the tunic and turned it into a new thing called a toga, right? So now this one is massively important, and you need to jot this down, all right? It's called the Facies, all right? Fasces, all right? The Facies, right? So the Facies is really important because it became a symbol of ruling power, and it became a symbol of the government, right? Every single time a dictator was ushered in, or a general was ushered in, or a new senator was ushered in to the Roman government, whenever it evolves, they would carry with them in front of them a Facies, right? What a Facies is an axe with wooden rods that go around the outside of it, strapped together with leather, right? It's not so much of a weapon as it is a symbol of stability, rigidity, and ruling authority, right? And some of y'all are like, why is this thing so important? It's not that big of a deal. My name's blah, blah, blah. Insert child here that complains that history is not relevant. But check this out. Let's look at Senate Hall, Washington, D.C. All right, here we go. So if you look in the back of the Senate Hall, right, where they actually have all of these meetings and they do the State of the Union address and they do all of these other amazing things, where are we at? Faces. Oh, I don't know. Maybe where the President of the United States gives the State of the Union address every single year. Oh, maybe there are these gigantic Faces that are on the back wall right there, covered in laurel ivy, right? Oh, man. Oh, not like it's not around us all the time. Yeah, Roman Republic, not like we use their government almost directly and ripped it off. Oh, man. Faces. 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 Faces! All right, so anyway, it's very, very important. All right, so now the Faces, do not forget the Faces. All right, so anyway, but it is a symbol of ruling power and government even today. All right, so now the Romans are then going to start conquesting all of Italy. All right, here's another crazy thing that ends up happening. Rome is going to fight several small wars because as they begin to grow, right, they start taking over the small city-states around them. Because remember, like I said, there were other people in Italy, right? The Etruscans get taken over by the Romans later on. The original Latins that had turned into several other different types of people get taken over by Rome, right? They start taking over all of these different little settlements. And one really big one that changes the game for all of the Romans is the conquest of the Equi. I can never remember how to pronounce this. We're just going to call them the Equi or something like that. One of y'all should look it up for extra credit. Whoever looks up that word and tells me how to pronounce it in class tomorrow first. I got you. All right, so anyway, now really, really quick, all right, this man, very important. This sets up a Roman cultural trend, okay? So their conquest of these rebellious people sets up this idea that was originally a Greek idea, but the Romans adopted for themselves, all right? Every single time the Romans would be at war, they wanted to streamline their government, right? They wanted to bring in what was known as a dictator, right? So a dictator is very, very different from a tyrant, right? When we talked about Greeks, we talked about the rule of the tyrants, right? So tyrants were brought in for the same reason. Tyrants were brought in during times of crisis to try and streamline the government. But tyrants are single autonomous rulers that control everything. A dictator is a little different. They directly control the military. They're usually a general, right? So apparently, the first and most famous general that set the trend, who was actually probably just a myth, I really hope he's real, was a man by the name of Cincinnatus, all right? And this is him right here, Cincinnatus. Now, if we look at him really quick, what's he holding again? Oh, I don't know. The Facies. All right, so now, anyway, so this is Cincinnatus standing in front of a plow, because as the story goes, the Romans were on the verge of defeat, and they were losing a huge battle against these these rebellious people, right? So the Equi, or however you say them. Now, anyway, but the big thing is that the Romans apparently went to Cincinnatus, who was a farmer. He had retired from the military. He was done fighting wars. And they ran up to him and they were like, Sir, Cincinnatus, we need you. We need your help. We need you to lead us. We need you to be our dictator. Control our people, control our government, be in charge, and lead us to victory. And apparently Cincinnatus said no words, looked at them, wiped his brow of sweat, picked up his weapons, and walked to the front line. Oh, like a hero, right? And also, oh, I don't know, maybe the city of Cincinnati is named directly after this guy, all right? So, so Cincinnatus starts this big idea that Rome is directly led by one single dictator in times of crisis, right? So Cincinnatus also established this as well. Jot this down. It's the last thing for the flip tonight. When Cincinnatus won his monumental victory, and when he destroyed these people and brought them into the Roman Empire, he then quit. He turned the Roman rule back over to the government, to their senate, and to their ruling bodies, and he went back to farming, and he minded his own business, right? He set the trend that not only does Rome bring in a dictator whenever they're in times of crisis or war, but that dictator, when his job is done, is supposed to step down and leave. There are several dictators that didn't do this. All right, and we'll talk about one famous one who ends up getting stabbed in the back a little bit later on. All right, but that's it. So I'll go ahead and talk to you guys a little bit later tomorrow. Good job, very impressed. You're going to kill this Rome unit. Let's go. All right, so I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.